And what I'll do is I'm out of the picture because I want you to be able to see my sketch and how I get started with a still life. So welcome everybody, I'm Kathy. And this is the still life that I've set up. Last week I had some daisies, but the daisies did not last. So I went out this morning and picked some flowers from a tree. And I'm just gonna go with the shapes that I have here. In a still life, you want to have an odd number of objects. So I'm really counting the flowers as one unit. So I have 5 shapes. 3 shapes like Faith had in her still life is perfect. And I loved the still life also that Marilyn set up. The thing I don't want to focus on is the background too much, but I do want to have some of the background in. I'll start with the tallest object. I could actually do this still life up and down in a different kind of presentation. I could do this as a vertical rather than a horizontal. I was looking for another piece of paper. Okay, so I could have gone this way with my paper, but I chose to spread it out. So the way I start is, even without a ruler, I can place a line down the middle of where this bottle is. But by doing so, I can start with the top and draw the bottle, and I tend to be very realistic with just looking at these shapes, and at the same time drawing in where my whites are going to be. There are going to be some whites in the for the highlights. What we have are in any object, and I'll demonstrate this with the apple more than anything else. What I'm doing now is paralleling and symmetrically drawing the lines on either side of the central axis so that I'm defining where the bottle will be shaped here. And so when I draw over here, I come back to this side and I make the same. I might be drawing a little darker than I normally would for a watercolor painting. And the reason is that so that you can see it. But through the glass, this line gets a bit distorted, and I'm coming down. I'm going to, the wine bottle, the wine glass next to it has an oval shape. So I start with that oval, and I'm just gonna get in my basic shapes. What I'm also trying to keep in mind is that nothing is really falling into the center of my composition, but that there is some overlap and interesting shapes that are going on with my still life. I could put some shapes going behind the bottle, for example. Okay, I know I'm jumping around between the objects, but I do want to see their relationship. The best work for drawing is a book called Drawing on the Right Side of the Brain, which has you examine what you see, not what you know. Because if you thought about what you know, you would say that wine bottle glass is round, but when indeed you are looking at that round shape becomes an oval based on where your line of vision is. My line of vision is above that. So I do see the opening, and this is approximate the opening of the glass that I see from where I am. So the reason we have the still life set up is so that we can stay in one fixed position. And again, I could put a line down the center of this glass to help me with the symmetry. And I don't want a tangent. A tangent is when, if I had the wine glass over here, I would be seeing it in the same line as the bottle. So I do want a little overlap. I place it so I would have an overlap, but that I would also have the stem separate from the center of the bottle. So I'm talking a little bit about placement, but I'm also talking about the idea of objects that relate and have a sense of unity and balance. With this idea and the odd numbers and the idea of positive and negative space, I don't want to overcrowd my objects by having filling up my space with too much and not having breather. Breather is the space around these objects. And I also don't want my objects to be so small that I'm overwhelmed by the negative space that's around it. I want them to work in unity. Now, I do have a drapery fold that comes through here. Some of this drapery I'm going to sketch. Some of it I'm going to keep as a suggestion of like this light coming down right here. And I feel like my glass is a little lopsided. Another trick is to turn your drawing upside down and you can see it a little better. So I make these corrections. Again, I'm looking at where all my lights are. I have a multitude of lights because of my light source. And I draw those light places because I don't want to lose them when I'm painting. I want to leave the white of the paper. A lot of different ways of keeping the light of the paper. One is to use a masking fluid. One is to take pieces of masking tape and actually taking the masking tape and taking little pieces and plopping them down to help you remember where those whites are. And I might do that a little bit. This bottle is looking pretty flat. The way I'm going to create a sense of roundness on this bottle is through the lights that are bouncing off. Actually, the shoulder of this bottle should be a little higher. I think the bottle should go out of the picture a great deal more. Maybe I could correct that by making this glass a bit smaller, but I'm going to leave it. And this usually has, a bottle usually has a label on it, which helps also with that sense of giving a curved line to say that it's rounded here. This one's got a design, which I'll play down. I'm looking now at the drapery shadow that's falling here and the rest of the flowers. So I'm working with these leaves, and I really wish I was still drawing the daisies, but I'm going to put down the suggestion of these shapes that I see and simplify them a bit. My apple is really more down here. I'm going to correct what I had roughly sketched earlier and put the apple in the place that it really is. So I wanted to demonstrate with the apple a little bit lights and shadows, and I wanted to define what we have with lights and shadows. The apple is shaded on this side. So what we call this the core of the shadow. This is the highlight, as we had highlights here and here and here. This would be where the light is coming from. We also have what is called a cast shadow, which is going to be on this object with the drapery. And I'm indicating it here a little bit. That cast shadow, we have the core of the shadow, we have the light area, we have the highlight, and then we have what is called a reflected light. A reflected light usually is just light on the bottom side that gets reflected. It's like on your chin, sometimes you have that reflected light. All right, so now I need to draw the object that's behind. And I'm a little off because I don't really see that much on this side with the base. This is a piece of pottery. And then I have the flower hanging down and another leaf and another flower here. Matter of fact, it overlaps with the bottle, which is nice. It breaks that straight line up. And I continue. I see a lovely stem. I think that's the leaf here that's coming from that stem. And then I can feel this space. I used to have a rule. I usually do try to keep my rule of touching all the sides with my drawing. And that would be important here because there's not much going on over here. If I don't use this piece of space right here, I'll just cut it off or crop it off, which is not a bad thing to do. When you're all finished, you can look at your design and say, is that space even necessary to make my painting work? Because if not, then it should just be eliminated. All right, I am filling this in with some more leaves and flowers. And I don't quite fill up the space, so I know I'll probably end up doing something like eliminating that side of the paper. There is a lot of shadow to this object and a handle that comes up through here. And then I see a lot of confusion with my drapery. I wish I had simplified that. And I'll simplify it now through this. I see a little bump here, and then this would be a lot of shadow to this side of the design with some of the drape lines. So basically I have a sketch of the objects, and I'm beginning now to think about how to begin the watercolor. To do so, I want to work with some basic color that's going to be my underlining color for the background. And because it is a light blue, a pale blue, and I might even go toward a gray, I'll start with a pale blue. And I'm just mixing here several of my blues, my cerulean and my cobalt, and adding water. I could, this is a textured towel. I noticed that in Faith's still life, she had rib designs in her fabric. She might not want to put those rib designs in there. And the reason I say that is that it might take away from the beauty of those beautiful white objects. Now, I'm putting the material in as a pale wash without the darks and the lights. I'm just putting in that color. Obviously, with the glass, I can see through the glass. And this is a good point to say, all right, I'm going to show the color of the drape that's behind this glass right now. And I just touch some places. I get that blue in the glass to some extent, but I leave a lot of the whites. All right, maybe what I would do if I were in a class, I wouldn't paint all of the background because it takes too much time, but I'll paint just a little bit more of it, and I'll show you shadow from one side. I hope that you can see what I'm doing now. I'm going around the objects, and I'm not going to see any color through the wine bottle at all. All right, so I basically have applied a wash for the background with no drapery shadows, but simply putting in the color that's the overall color, and I would continue going all the way through with that basic color, okay? I'm gonna come back and add those shadows later. Today, I want to get it started. So now I'm looking at my darkest dark is going to be the wine bottle. I'm going to have some darks in the glass. I'm going to have some color here. I kind of want to fill in some without pretend I have done my shadows over here, because I'll work on that and show that to you next week. I will have this finished. I will have the drapery color finished. I'll show you a little bit of shadow today, and then I'll show you more shadow next week. I'll show you how to finish the detail next week. All right, so I'm going to put in another basic color, and I'm going to go with that darker blue, and it's a bit of a gray. Oh, why did I stick my brush in green? Okay, blue, try again, and a little bit of my burnt sienna, and I love to get a dark blue that way. That's lovely. So this shape is dark, but it has a lot more light on that side. I should start over here. This is going to be my shadow side. So, and it has some pattern and some ridges in it. I'm going to soften what I just added over here because it was way too dark. And I'm going to lighten it up just with some water and lift with a dry brush there. And keep going. around this apple shape.
Before you finish,
Uh-huh.
will you solve that line right here?
Okay, what do you want me to do with
I
it,
mean,
Jim?
show how you solve that, because that's confusing.
Jim says this line is a bit confusing. So what I saw was a fold, and maybe what I need to do is follow that line. Does that help, Jim? And bring that up. Okay. What he saw is it looked like the bottle was cut off, and he's right. That was awkward because typically the bottom of the bottle would be rounded. So because this was a drapery fold that comes from over here to over here, by my continuing that line and adding this, it did get better, didn't it, Jim?
But when you paint it,
I hope it does get better. And actually, there'll be some more lines in here, and this will get real dark. All right. Thanks, Jim. No.
Can you move
Yes.
for just a minute so we can see the bottom of your
The objects themselves?
yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Oh, I see what you're saying. So what Jim was pointing out is this line right here tended to cut off the bottom. I made it a bit severe.
Okay.
But that's what I'm looking at.
Okay.
Yes, I got it. So every now and then I'll do that too. Okay, so what I'm doing is looking at what I have and trying to translate some colors. So maybe I put some green out. Maybe I will work with a bit of the burnt sienna, cobalt blue, and that green. Or is that a brown bottle? I'm going to make it a green bottle. I'm going to go ahead and put in my first wash for this. Boy, it's really dark. This is really dark. I'm using my flat brush, but I wonder if I'd be more comfortable using my round brush. If when you're working, you go back and forth between your brushes, is because it just, you know what feels right and what doesn't feel right. Now, I don't see a lot of value changes in this bottle. Also, I'm careful, this was dry. You don't want to do anything where it's still wet. Oh, there is some value changes because there's some more darks in here, a lot more darks. Are you familiar with the artist Cezanne, Paul Cezanne? I meant to pull up an illustration of Paul Cezanne, and I might find some other examples and send them to Faith so that this week we can really look at lights and shadows in objects. He was known for his landscapes as well, Mont Saint-Victoire, as well as his still life objects. And when he painted them, he really was concerned with the lights and shadows of the objects. He worked in a studio where the window light was his main light source. Okay, now I can see that I'm enjoying this too much, and I really get lost in looking at what happens when one glass object overlaps another glass object. And that's what I'm doing right here, is just observing where the glass object here, the rim has got some gray in it on the glass, but I'm seeing the wine bottle through it. And then I think it gets lighter, where out here, this is darker, where the wine bottle and this glass come together. Here's my highlight that I'm painting around. Oh, I forgot to put the masking tape on. So I don't know if that would be a trick you want to try. I do love to use my masking pen, but you have to let it dry. There's just that problem. So I'm showing some streaks in here, and I'm seeing lots of lights and dark. I said there were very little lights and darks, and I have to take that all back because there's a lot going on in this wine bottle. And so by doing the middle value first, and then I can just develop it darker and darker and darker. Okay, I think you're getting the gist of what I'm seeing. Jim came up with a couple of images of Paul Cézanne. Well, those are videos. Oh, you're here. You're right. Perfect. Can I get one big?
I think so.
Okay. Jim has found a couple of examples for me to show you of Paul Cézanne. Oops. Okay. How do I get rid of that, Jim? When he, okay.
Keep your fingers off the.
Keep my fingers off the screen.
You can
Okay.
mail them. We can mail them out.
Okay.
They'll
This is
stay
just
on
real
better.
quick. This is just really quick. It's off his iPad. And so here's a beautiful example of drapery and objects that are still life objects that Paul Cézanne did. Thanks, Jim. That was perfect. Yeah. And another reason, the folds of white drapery are beautiful because they're often blue. All right. So I think that you get the idea here with a bottle. My basic idea is to get as much done in a few more minutes, and that means to make get the painting done on the flowers. I want everybody to have time to maybe get a still life started, a sketch. These are pink, and somebody asked the question, oh, Linda, you asked about cleaning your brush. Well, I didn't clean my brush, and then my pink is not very pretty. So maybe you always need to clean your brush. I'm putting on a very light, I'm using that rose madder now, very light hint of pink. And I'll come back and get more detail, but I'm just getting my color. I leave some hints of light areas. So now the apple. Let's talk about the apple. Let's say I wanted to save that little spot of light on that apple, and I did not want to, does that have highlights of a wine bottle, Jim? Let me see that one you just had in your hand. Oh yeah, this one has some highlights with do you see the wine bottle that Paul Cézanne? You see the highlight that's there. And also look at those dark shadows and the apple forms. You see some highlights and some dark shadows. He had a tendency though, that's an oil painting, putting blue around his, so I put a little dab of masking tape right here. So I would not, and I'm rubbing that down because I can lift that up later. I'm gonna paint this apple, and I think I'm gonna do it in a little different way. I'm gonna wet it. And it's got some yellow in the apple. And it's got a lot of that bright red. I can pretty well match it right here. It's with my palette. And paint that red. And again, I contour paint. There's some texture to that apple that I'll come back and do a little dry brush later. There's some light over here too, so I'm aware of that. Now I'm going to make some dark red, touch of blue with my red, a little more touch of blue. And I'm painting now where the dark side of the apple is. And I'm leaving a little bit of a reflected light here. And I'm just going to drag this brush. Okay, so now I'm going to let that stay, and I'll add some more to it a little later to define that little divot and to darken the shadow. I can almost darken it now. And I'll peel this off once that's dry. All right, so let's do a little bit with the leaves and then some folds, and then we're going to do some painting. These are a little bit of a brighter green. So I started with my yellow green, the skips green. There's some lights and some darks within these leaves, and they do have a pattern. So I will be working with a pattern that we see, and I can do a little bit of that now, but mostly I have to add the darks on top of the lights. But here it gets a little lighter. I think there's some highlighting that I need to talk about right here. And I'll just put a little water on my brush. Okay, so getting all the green established, sketched in. Now, there's a lot more to do. There's a lot more to do, and I'm going to quickly suggest a few shadows and do a little bit more on the glass. And so I'd like to put some dark shadows in. I want to show you how dark you really would go using the blue-brown for this cloth. I see such a, in fact, I want to put a little bit of this purple, not much. I want to go very dark. I got to be careful because it's still wet here on that side. I want to show the shadow. Actually, I think the shadow comes up a little higher. It almost is the same color as the vase, the pottery. And a shadow sometimes has dark places in it. And it's darker down here, the way the shape of the fold of the material. And I'm just gonna soften this edge a little, some water. And then there's another shadow here. And there's some transitions in some of these places. For instance, if I see a line, I see a little bit of a line here. And then there's another very strong line here. It gets darker, really, all of this gets darker. So I'm gonna have to, this is all very dark back here. And this gets extremely dark. This is probably the darker. This is almost as dark as the bottle. And this is what will help your painting really pop. It's funny that in that shadow, I saw a light spot. So I made a little water there to show that light spot. And this helps to show the role of the material. It's a little bluer. You need to make it a little bit more bluer. Huh. And it's still dark back here. All right. Whew. I've got a lot of shadow to play in and out and between those places and all back in here. I want to put a little bit more on the glass so that the glass, this wine glass, starts to show up. There is probably a reflection in the stem from the wine bottle. So it's what I do may not be anything that has to do with what you are doing as a still life object, as your still life painting. You may see totally different things, but it's a matter of really observing in your objects what you do see. What you see will be different from what I see, and I think that's the beauty of being an artist and seeing what you It's like a discovery. I'm getting a little bit dark, and I'm only trying to show only the darks that I do see, because now I need to show some of the lights, and this bottle has got to be finished. All right. With that, I shall stop. And I think we have enough to begin.
Great.
Oh, that's great. That's great, Kathy.
All right, well, it's a start. Hopefully that came through okay for everybody.
You're amazing, Kathy.
Oh, you're too kind. You're too
Oh,
kind.
I've tried to do that drape stuff